Hello, I'm Anawaltus, and today I want to explain why Californians are exporting their progressive policies to the places they move. Because I believe that it is a common myth among some conservative and moderate circles that there is a sort of political refugee situation where Californians are leaving California and moving to other areas because they have become fed up with the political policies that the government of California is implementing. Today, I want to explain to you why I don't think that this is true. That is to say, that I don't think that the majority of people that are leaving California are leaving it for explicitly or specifically political reasons. Now, I understand that there certainly are people who are upset at the policies that the government of California is implementing. And I do also understand that this group might be relatively vocal, but I do believe, based on the research that I have done now, that this is likely to be a minority among the people that leave California. That is to say, that a minority of people that leave California do so because of this ideological reason, and the vast majority do so for other reasons. So, for this reason, I'm going to show you some of my sources on this research. So, here's an article from the Public Policy Institute of California. So, and the topic is who's leaving California and who's moving in. Of course, I will be giving the links to everything I'm showing here in the description. So, the 2020 census results are in. California experienced its slowest growth rates ever during the 2010s. This slowdown was enough to cause an unprecedented loss of a seat in the House of Representatives. But it is part of a decades-long trend. The consequence of fewer births, more deaths, a slowing of international migration, and capturing a great deal of attention, a large migration out of California to other states. Much has been made of the California exodus, and rightly so. This migration over the decades has the power to reshape the state. During the 2010s, about 6.1 million people moved from California to other states, while only 4.9 million people moved to California from other states in the country. People who move to California are different from those who move out. In general, those who move here are more likely to be working age, to be employed, and to earn high wages. And this is going to be important later. And are less likely to be in poverty than those who move away. Those who move to California also tend to have higher education levels than those who move out, an especially important factor given the state's strong need for college graduates. Notably, this gain in educated residents is concentrated among young college graduates. Okay. Also of note, people who move to California have higher incomes than those who move away. And this is something that I want you to remember for later. Some have argued that the opposite is taking place, that California's relatively progressive and high personal income tax rates drive out higher income residents. But the fact is that California has been losing lower and middle income residents to other states for some time while continuing to gain high income adults. In the past 5 years, the flow of middle income residents out of the state has accelerated. And this is something that's very important here. And I think it's something to understand about taxation of the wealthy in general. Wealthy people, when they're taxed, they're more easily able to handle high rates of taxation and also have ways to recapturing the money that is lost more easily, particularly through things like having a market share. So if you pay more taxes, but you also have the opportunity to increase your market share, it's not really that much of a loss. And also, something that a lot of people would also point out is that wealthy people, especially people who own companies, have the ability to alter the way they structure their finances in order to pay less taxes on their income or other benefits. And the other benefits is very important because a person may gain benefits from work or through work, but not personally be the owner of those benefits. And that can also change the way that the taxes are done. So, in that sense, there are a number of ways that wealthy people can benefit from higher taxation and can also circumvent the negatives of higher taxation. But that's really a topic for another time. But I think that that's an important point to make, and I think it's very interesting to point out that the people that are leaving California are not the wealthiest people of California, although there are some wealthy people moving out of California, especially more recently. Uh, but of course, this data is relatively recent because you look at it, it's 2010 to 2014, 2015 to 2019, released in 2021. So this is just before the coronavirus pandemic. So, and of course, that will alter the data in major ways. But I'm not really getting to the point quite yet because I'm about to make a point quite later. Most people who move across state lines do so for economic or family reasons. And we're going to get back on this later. The vast majority of adults who left California in 2010 cited jobs, housing, and family. So 49%, 23%, 20%. So you add that up, and that's over 90%. And if you ask yourselves, where are the political reasons for this? Where are the political reasons why people are leaving California? That is in that under 10% that is left out of all the people that moved. Now, that being said, you can argue that the situation in jobs and the situation in housing and perhaps the climate in relation to family friendliness may be impacted by the politics of California, and those certainly are. But when people are asked a question of why did you leave California, most of these people didn't blame the politics. They didn't blame the government of California. They cited things that happened to them. As in, maybe they lost jobs, maybe they couldn't afford the rent, maybe they had a new member of a family. These people, if there is an ideological motivation to these people moving, it is certainly secondary to the more immediate concerns that directly impact them. Whereas people who would cite ideological reasons as the primary motivation are in that under 10% that is left after you add these up. And of course, the current population survey from the US Census, we'll be looking at the numbers on that in a minute. So highly educated, high-income workers are certainly helpful to the state's bottom line. They contribute to state tax revenue and use relatively few social services. But the larger picture painted by these trends illustrates the economic challenges faced by many lower and middle-income Californians. The state's high cost of living, driven almost solely by comparatively high housing costs, remains an ongoing public policy challenge, one that needs resolution if the state is to be a place of opportunity for all of its residents. So the Public Policy Institute of California is warning policymakers that if this situation goes on, they're going to lose their social infrastructure, essentially, because in a stratified society, it is important to have the lower class, the middle class, the upper class in a functioning social hierarchy. That is to say, that these complement each other in a society. And if you remove the bottom rungs of a society and you just leave the top, it's actually going to destabilize that society in major ways. And and it also emphasizes income inequality. If prosperity for the lower classes becomes impossible in a region, it can lead to a greater emphasis on that, and therefore a greater disdain from the public against the government. Although this isn't what's happening. What's happening is because there's other parts in the country that don't have the same problems in the same way California does, people can simply leave California and move there. So let's go to a Harvard study. An article on from Harvard University by Riordan Frost, and it talks about how many Americans are moving and where they're moving and why do people move. And once again, people move for a variety of reasons, but the most common motivator is housing. According to CPS, which is on the U.S. Census Bureau, which contains a question about the primary motivation for moving. 40% of movers did so for housing-related reasons in 2019. 27% moved for family-related reasons. 21% for job-related reasons, and 12% for other reasons. This breaks down differently by type of move, however. Local moves are primarily motivated by housing, but long-distance moves are primarily motivated by jobs. The only exception is for older Americans who make long-distance moves for family-related reasons more than job-related reasons. Okay. Another opinion here, this time from Beverly Hanks Realtors. And why do Americans move? And once again, citing the Census Bureau. Okay, and there's all these different reasons, and it breaks it down a bit more. That there's many Americans who move for family, some move for work, some move for better housing, and the other reasons at the very bottom, 3.51%. So that is the less than 10% I talked about in the article from the Public Policy Institute. It is actually less than 4% in the study that is being cited here. And this here is the CPS, Historical Migration Geographic Mobility Tables from the United States Census Bureau. So this is the study, the government statistics, the government census that talks about why people are moving. So we're going to actually look at the tables. I downloaded the tables, and we're going to see them. So here we are. Reasons for moving. So here we see all the different reasons why people might move in the United States. And the numbers are in thousands. So what we have is there's the family-related reasons, employment-related reasons, and we have housing-related reasons, and then there's the other reasons, and the other reasons subdivides into multiple sub-reasons, with none of these being ideological. Let me point out marital status, establishing a household, other family reasons, a new job, looking for work, being closer to work, retiring, other job-related reasons, wanting to own a home, wanting a new house, wanting a better neighborhood. less crime. You might say that this is more political, but once again, this doesn't enter into the state policy of California and looks more into the direct situation of a person that is moving. So this person isn't saying that the state of California isn't hard enough on crime. This person is saying that there is a bunch of crime in a neighborhood, and this person wants to move in a neighborhood where there is less crime. Now, could that be related to the policies of California? Of course it could be. But that's not the statement that is being made. And that's what I want people to understand, that there is a distinction between people's ideological motivations and the more immediate life-related motivations that people have. So if you were to picture Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have those physical needs that are more closely to the bottom, and the more social needs that are farther up. And people tend to be more concerned for their sustenance and their safety than they are for other things that they tend to look at later. Now, that being said, when you finally get down to philosophy, religion, ideology, etc., and these are the things that then people utilize to justify why they are interested in their own sustenance and in their safety and in all these other reasons. So I'm not saying that those things are less important to people, but I'm saying that if you were to ask the average person, what is important to you when you're moving someplace, they would probably say that they would want to move to a place where they can reliably survive, rather than move to a place where they are not politically oppressed in some way. And I think that that is the mentality of most people. Most people don't really look at ideology as a primary motivator for their actions, but instead they look at their other needs, and then based on that, they develop an ideology. And that's not to say that there aren't people who have deeply held religious convictions that then influence their politics, and they might take hard lines on things even though it could disadvantage them. That's not to say that that doesn't happen. But generally speaking, most people, when they think about these things, they think about their needs. So cheaper housing, foreclosure, other housing related reasons, and then you get into the other reasons: relationship with an unmarried partner, to go to college, change of climate. Notice how it's very small compared to most other reasons. Health reasons, natural disasters, and other reasons. Okay. But what is this as a proportion of the whole? Well, if you get to the percentage section here, so here we're looking at the percentages, what you see is that the other reasons tend to be less than 6%. Sometimes getting around 5%, sometimes going down to 1% in the 2019 to 2020 period. It was 3.5%. And that's what we saw in one of the other studies. So this means that out of all the reasons people primarily moving for ideological reasons is likely less than 3.5% in that period, because this is all other reasons other than the ones listed. This isn't just simply asking, did you not like the political views of the people leading the region? Did you not like their social policy? Did you not like how tough they were on crime? This isn't asking this as a specific segment. This is those questions and everything else that isn't listed put together into one place. So if you were to ask, Out of this, how many people actually left California or other places? Because this is nationwide, so this isn't talking specifically about California, but this is just general trends as to why people move. How many people across the United States are motivated to move by ideology? The answer is very, very few. And those very few people might be very vocal, but they are a minority. So you might ask, well, what does this have to do with California? What does this have to do with people leaving California and bringing their policies? Well, I'll explain it to you. So here we go on Pew Research Center, Pew Forums. What we have is the party affiliation among adults in California by household income. And what you have is that, and this is for the year 2014, so it's obviously changed since then, but I don't think it would change too significantly. At least based on how elections have been going in California. So what you have is that around half of Californians are either Democrats or Democrat leaning. And these are the people that favor the more progressive policies, generally speaking. Then there's Republican and Republican leaning, and it's actually very different based on income. So wealthier non-Democrats tend to be more Republican, whereas poor non-Democrats tend to be more indecided. Where you see that the poorest bracket on here, there's actually more people that are neutral between the Democrats and Republicans than people that are Republican or lean Republican. And you might say, and some people might say that, well, most of these people in the middle tend to then lean towards the Republicans. But in 2014, what we see is in the actual gubernatorial election that the Democrats picked up 60% to the Republicans' 40%. And what does this mean in relation to this chart? This means that it is likely, based on the distribution, that a significant part of the neutral people on here, or the people that are not politically engaged, what I'm saying is that this neutral group here could be referring to people that are simply not politically engaged, because out of the people that are politically engaged, the independents in California do very much lean towards the Democrats or tend to vote for the Democrats. So if we were to take the people that don't lean but that are politically engaged and divide them up, the Democrats would take a significant portion of those people. Because they have around just over 50%, if you count the people that would reliably vote for the Democrats, and you add to that another 10% for people that vote for the Democrats, but aren't reliably leaning towards the Democrats. And what you have is a situation where the Democrats do have a clear majority in California, at least in 2014. Now, I understand that in later years, the data would be different, but I would point out that the recall election on Gavin Newsom did end up failing, and the reason why it failed, many people say, is because although many Californians were upset at potential mishandlings that Gavin Newsom made as the governor of California, they were more fearful of the potential of a strong Republican candidate gaining the opportunity from such a situation to perhaps get the governorship than they were of Gavin Newsom continuing in office, despite the criticism that had been made of him. Whereas the Republicans portrayed the recall election as a strong criticism against Gavin Newsom and his policies, the Democrats saw it as a Republican attempt to have a power grab. So, in essence, my point at the end of this is based on the fact that poor people in California are more likely to vote for Democrats, and based on the fact that poor people or lower income people are more likely to leave California, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, and based on the fact that most people who move across the United States, the vast majority of which don't describe ideology as their primary motivator, it should be no surprise at all that Californians who leave California to move to other states are more likely than not to be ideologically progressive, ideologically left-leaning, ideologically aligned with the Democratic Party of California, and that therefore it should be no surprise that these people vote in the same way that they did in California as they do in other places, because it is reasonably likely that these people don't see problems with jobs or with housing that occurred in California to them as being linked with the ideology that is dominant in California. Which is to say that if a Californian moves into another part of the United States, you should not expect that person to be highly critical of the policies that were implemented in California that people across the country, especially conservatives, really don't like and associate with the bad state of affairs that is arising in California. And therefore, I can say that it is very reasonable to declare the idea that many Californians are leaving California for political reasons as sort of political refugees, to declare this as a myth, to declare it as false, to declare it as something that is likely to heavily mislead the expectations that people should have from former Californians. So tell me what you thought in the description, or not the description, in the comment section below. Do you agree with my reasoning? Do you think that there was a problem? Do you think that there's another element to this that I should have to check out? Because I think my point is relatively solid, that it is precisely because they are not disillusioned with their ideology that they bring their ideology to other places. The reason they move are very personal reasons, such as housing, employment, etc., but they don't associate their problems with housing and employment with their progressive ideology, as the conservatives and moderates in other parts of the country would associate them. And therefore, because they don't blame the policies that California has, they don't blame those policies as the source of the problems that California is having, it should be no surprise that they want to implement those same policies to other places they move, because they like those policies. And if the economy had been better for them, they would likely have stayed in California. But anyway, as I said, please leave comments in the comments section below. And the links to all of this will be in the description. And if you're interested in showing your appreciation, please go to my Patreon and donate there. So thank you all for watching, and I will be seeing you all next time on Wiltus Over and Out.